There was a psychologist who I quote in the book who works on a college campus, and she said the two most prescribed medications on the college campus are birth control pills and antidepressants. And she said that's not a coincidence.
Yeah, there might be a correlation there, actually, and a causation. But the question, I think, on many people's minds is, how is it better to tell young Christians and old Christians that sexually, let's say, just not even putting everything else aside, food and all the other stuff we've talked about, just with people's sexual expressions and sex lives, to wait and save everything for marriage, and even if it takes longer than you hope, to wait and hold on to your sexuality, keep that, saved for marriage. How is that more liberating and more loving of the body?
Because it keeps the whole person integrated. In other words, I often get from my students, isn't it enough to be in love? But even then, that's not, if sex, think of it this way, the deepest, most intimate, most complete physical union is meant to express the most complete and intimate emotional and personal union. I mean, it's meant to be expression of the inner person.
Yeah.
And so if your inner person is not completely committed with this person, then in a sense you're lying with your body. You're saying something that's not true.
Yeah.
Because if what you do is an expression of your inner self, and it is. I mean, how do we know the other person's inner self? By what they do with their body, what they say, what they do. So in one sense, your body is even more important because it's the only way I know your inner self.
Yeah.
And so if what you do is expressing your inner self, then the most complete and intimate physical union is meant to be an expression of the most complete personal union. And anything less than that is not telling the truth. I have to tell you, this was how I thought of it when I was a teenager even, when I was not a Christian.
Really?
Yeah. I thought, I'm lying. If I let a guy even hold my hand, if I even let him hold my hand when I don't like him,
Right.
In a sense, I'm lying with my body. I'm saying something that's not true.
Yeah.
And so if it's as true of something as simple as letting somebody hold your hand, how much more is it true of the sexual union?
Yeah. What's interesting about hookup culture is it's gotten to the point now where holding a hand is a bigger deal than hooking up.
That's true.
And, I've heard young people talk about how they've hooked up with more people than they've held hands with. And that seems to be a common phenomenon these days. It's very sad sign of the times.
Yes, it is.
I think it's always shocking to people when they see the data, though, on sexual satisfaction. And the most sexually satisfied people seem to be folks that are monogamous and married and having more sex than anyone, and better sex, apparently, by their own accord.
And do you know, I do talk about this in the next book, the data that you just mentioned. It first came to light in 1977 in the magazine Red Book. I don't know if you even remember.
I have vague memories in the checkout aisle.
Yeah. Red Book was a completely secular women's magazine. And they did a survey, and they asked some questions about sexuality, and they asked questions about religion. And to their great surprise, they discovered that highly religious women who are married have much higher levels of sexual satisfaction.
Yeah.
1977.
Right.
And it's been repeatedly replicated. So
clearly that's a shock to people because they expect Christians to be prudish and boring and, just utilitarian about sex. And so it takes the world by surprise when they hear these things.